Feeling sick and seasick, Jose Rizal passed the heavy tropical heat of Manila to the sharp cool of Chinese winter on February 8, 1888. He reached Hong Kong. He found Hong Kong as a small but very clean commercial city, filled with foreigners and a small Filipino community, exiles from Marianas in 1872. One of them was Jose Maria Basa, who made good in business in Hong Kong. Jose Rizal met Basa when he stayed in Basa's house. Mr. Basa turned out deeply interested in Rizal's work and devoted himself to the Philippines. After 2 weeks of stay in Hong Kong, he left for Yokohama. Rizal even had a brief love affair with Ozio Seiko, a beautiful woman from a noble family, or as he called her, Osei-san. He wrote in his diary his deep admiration for the love and kindness Ozio Seiko showed him, yet he bids goodbye with longing and regret. Rizal continued his journey towards some of the coasts across the United States. While he was bound for San Francisco, he was kept in a quarantine with 800 other Chinese migrants for 8 days who went abroad of the prior vessel made Rizal advise his family not to travel this trip to America. Nevertheless, he enjoyed his coast-to-coast journey by train. On May 24, he reached Liverpool, England. The next day, he left for London, and the first one Rizal contacted was the librarian of the Indian office, Dr. Reinhold Rost, the greatest Sanskrit scholar in Europe. Dr. Ross agreed with Blumentritt's advice that the best place of research and the breeding place of revolution for Rizal is the British Museum. Having rare copies of his original Spanish edition of Antonio de Morga's Success of de las Islas Filipinas, Rizal's aim changed. Instead of writing an account of the Philippines, he published a new edition of Morga's work, and in order to do this, he undertook a heavy set of contributory historical reading. While Rizal was also making himself an expert on philology, particularly about the need of standard system of spelling words in the Philippine languages. Started on a second novel, the sequel of Noli Me Tangere. While Noli Me Tangere already reached Manila, an event happened while the Gobernadorcillo of Manila presented a civil governor with a petition demanding the expulsion of the friars from the Philippines. Somehow, it was the first public aftermath of the influence of the Noli Me Tangere. The manifestation was debated in the Senate in Madrid, and unfortunately, the senators rejoiced over the castigation of the sponsors of the manifestation, which the Senate wanted all along. Rizal was greatly disappointed as what he had written to Blumentritt. Simultaneously, Noli Me Tangere controversy was spreading in the Philippines. People somehow found the courage to speak of their beliefs. Therefore, the criticism of the friars grew. At the same time, Rizal turned his eyes with more hope to Barcelona, the second largest Filipino colony in Europe. The arrival of Marcelo H. del Pilar gave way to a greater activity in Barcelona. The Barcelona colony formed an association in February 1847 called La Solidaridad, of which Rizal was the president. La Solidaridad requested for a secularization of the parishes, the removal of the friars, the representation of the Philippines in the Spanish Cortes, participation in the affairs of the government, equality before law, freedom of gathering of the press and of speech, a wider social and individual freedom of adaptation. At the same time, Rizal's personal life and thoughts for the worsening concerns of the faith of his family trapped in the province of Calamba Hacienda. Although the town of Calamba had petitioned the government, it never really reached General Terrero because in May 1888, General Terrero left for Philippines and later arrived his successor, General Weyland, who eventually was the most workable tool of the friars. The first signal of trouble is when a medical student was searched and had been found to having a copy of Nolly's and when all these threats lying over Colombo, Rizal left at once for Paris, then to Madrid to take measures for his family's protection. Still, Rizal went back to London and resumed his work, then received a Hong Kong court. Sylvester Ubaldo wrote to London describing the situation. Earlier he advised his brother-in-law against raising the hacienda question, but now he asked Jose to work with all activity towards asking the government to guarantee their safety of people's homes and means of survival and to determine their property rights. Rizal gave this out by setting out the facts of the cause in the pages of La Solidaridad. But despite this, in May 1889, General Weyler marked the issue from Madrid of two important decrees concerning the Philippines, the Civil Code in the Philippines and the Bestseller Law, or implementing local self-government on basis of election in main towns of the Philippines. By June, the temperamentally undisciplined Lopez Haina was doing less as editor of La Solidaridad, so Marcelo H. del Pilar edited the paper, and a week or so, eventually, he took over entirely.
During his stay in Paris, he lived first in a series of hotels, and among those Rizal came to know in Paris was the wealthy Anglo-Filipino Eduardo Stad, son of one of the most famous of Britain's East India merchants. He had married a well-known Manila family, and younger of the daughters, Nelly, was very reserved and had a quality about her: determined mouth, strong nose and jaw, and most of all, she was a thinker. When Nelly and her family went to Biarritz, Rizal's friends thought he was very interested in her, or even in love with her. But Antonio Luna, through whom Rizal had met, that the Stad was standing his way. Though at first Antonio Luna was unaware of this, but eventually both were interested in Nelly, and they even almost had a duel that never happened.
As the filibusterismo almost complete, the urge of going back to the Philippines was strong. Rizal knew that as every patriot should serve his own country, yet his friends reacted swiftly and with anxiety. One of them was Bumindrit. He suggested Jose Rizal to go back to Madrid and obtain legal assistance and advice with the Calamba Hacienda litigation, but once again the judgment got in the favor of the Dominicans. Thus, the leaders in the litigation would be the first to lose their homes and property. Outlawry had gone mad in the country, and special orders had been issued to the civil guard empowering them to shoot on sight and Rizal contacted influential Spaniards in office who were interested in Philippine reform, but these liberals were out of power, and even the conservative lady, the Minister for Overseas Territories, was to close the ears, open the purse, and fold the arms. The conservatives were not interested in discussing anything which might involve an alteration in the Philippines way things are now. At the end of the year, Leonor Rivera broke her engagement with Rizal and announced her forthcoming marriage to an Englishman named Henry Kipping. On his side, during the year of her silence, there had been uso seco, mild flirtation with Gertrude Beckett, and evident interesta in Nellie Boustead. Yet all of this was nothing before the shock of his loss of Leonor. In fact, Leonor's mother planned it all. She bribed a clerk at the post office to block Rizal's messages. Thus, both were left with the impression of having been forgotten. Eventually, Leonor knew about this and confronted her mother, admitted what she had done. Yet Leonor bravely kept herself to Kipping. Another big problem rose with the Filipino colony and its resident leader Del Pilar. The ongoing tone of potential difficulty when Rizal had kept himself out of the limelight. The movement was not achieving enough and needed rethinking of its aims, and moreover, Del Pilar, in their opinion, was beginning to lose his grip in the editorship of La Solidaridad. They decided that the committee should be composed of a responsible and two advisors, and 2/3 of them voted for Rizal. But Del Pilar refused to allow control of the newspaper. Eventually, Rizal won and offered the appointment, but he wrote a brief letter of thanks, declining and left for France and Biarritz. He spent a month as a guest of the Bowsett family, continued his corrections, and courted Nellie. She liked him very much because Rizal persisted on her. He seemed genuinely in love with her, but one thing she didn't approve of him was his religion. Nellie was a Protestant, while Rizal was more of agnosticist, and she promised that she would wait until he was ready to raise with her father the question of formal engagement. After he left Biarritz, doubts assailed him and he was somehow coming to himself again. Eventually, they parted as friends. Basa in Hong Kong and various friends in Europe had somehow assisted him when the allowance in Manila didn't turn up. By the end of May, El Filibusterismo was completed and in Ghent, the novel was entrusted to print. In mid-September, Valentin Ventura sent him a sum of fiction to cover the costs. The book was dedicated to the memory of the 3 Filipino priests executed in 1872. El Filibusterismo is a novel that bears an irresistible urge to revolution as a terrible warning to Spain. At the beginning of October, he left Ghent, going as far as Paris. His reasons were his disgust over the disunity in Madrid, leadership, and by the thought of the suffering he had caused his family. From all sides came warnings not to return to the Philippines. In Paris, he was surrounded by some of his closest friends, but he believed that if he did not obey these impulsions of returning home, he would fail in his duty and mission, as he sat into his letter to Maximum Viola in 1887.
I too pray from time to time, but actually when I do, it does not occur to me to ask for anything. I believe that I have all, and since whatever happens to me is His will, I am content and resigned. I do not know, but I always say to myself, I'll try and do this and that, which will in the end come out as God desires.